Welcome to the USA, where everyone needs a gimmick. A group of researchers set upon a journey to discover the uncharted Skull Island, unaware of the adventure they were really going to have. Not in a good way. It's a big effing monkey. What do you want? The good. Creative imagery. Kong bared its teeth when they released the poster for the movie. Look at this thing. It's so good. The different colors, it's not bright but it's not dark like most of the posters coming out. It shows off Kong and at the same time it doesn't, and the whole thing looks warm. Very tropical, which fits the island. The sun is a big part of the imagery for the movie and is used to show location and size, which is one of the many things the movie uses to its advantage visually. There were other examples such as the storm that surrounded the island, or the Nixon bobblehead as it went through said storm. Other parts include the monsters on the island, which were terrifying to say the least, but they sure were designed well enough. And Kong himself was a mix of the original King Kong and the Japanese monster. The island was beautiful to look at, but you felt a little uneasy knowing what was about to occur. Action. Kong's best piece is the action in the film. Now, action is a very vague word with film. As long as it had enough shaky cam nowadays, it has action. But Kong combines its calamity on the island with their creative camera angles to form some intense imagery and moments. Moments that were made to cause emotions to stir or be impactful on the audience, and each time, it was. The world. Kong adds a lot more history and lore to the world of the kaiju. Perhaps more to Kong than anything, but hell, the movie is called Kong, it should be about him. That being said, it's not only about him. It brings up the theory of the Hollow Earth, which will most likely use that for the origins of other monsters in the next few movies coming. It gives history to the Skull Island and background to the company of Monarch, which wasn't touched upon in the longer, modern-day Godzilla film. The bad. Too many characters. This will always be a bad in films where they have so many siders, because they're always developed too little, or they develop other characters too much, making it less likely to care about the other characters. The only characters I can actually remember names from are Marlowe and Kong, for more than obvious reasons. Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, John C. Reilly were the only ones that my eye was drawn to, only due to their name and star power. Maybe Brie Larson in the future after Captain Marvel, she'll get recognition, but here she didn't really give anything spectacular. No one did. Maybe John C. Reilly, but that's just from him being who he is. The rest of the characters felt like a distraction from the main plot, rather than actually being a focus on the story. The most interesting characters were the soldiers under Samuel's command, Chapman and others. Other than that, every time they were on screen, I was hoping to see more of Kong or just the island. Also, a thing that I'm slowly starting to hate more and more is the 2010s dialogue between characters. You know what I'm talking about. It's in most Marvel films and any Warner Brothers film.
Why? Because it sounds neat.
Okay.
Look, I just made that name up. I'm trying to scare you.
I'm fine calling them that. Are you cool with it?
Yeah, that seems like
I
that
like
seems
the
like
name.
It's trying to be awkward and witty while at the same time sounding confident with the situation. Start looking for it now and maybe you'll notice it. Star Wars, Force Awakens, Star Trek, anything with Chris Pratt, and Kong is no different. But they didn't even try too hard for meaningful dialogue or exposition, that it doesn't even bother me as much as their lack of effort does. They weren't developed enough for me to want to care, and they didn't show anything for me to get invested. Predictable. The film wasn't necessarily predictable, but that was the best word for it. The more relevant phrase is that it didn't matter what happened in the movie. I knew Kong wasn't gonna die, I knew he would win, I knew people would die. I was fairly certain Tom Hiddleston would survive. I thought there was gonna be more of a romantic subplot, thankfully not. The story really didn't seem to matter. It was an origin for Kong, not the humans. Even if all the humans died on the island, nothing would change. Kong was going to get off that island in 2020 to face off against Godzilla either way. But maybe I should just stop thinking and have fun with it. And you know what? That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Fight just for fun! Best character. Marlowe. Hank Marlowe. John C. Reilly's character, Hank Marlowe, was a 1940s pilot who crashed on Skull Island with an enemy pilot. Over the 28 years he spent on the island, he befriended his enemy and learned a lot from him. When we find him, he's a kooky old man just wanting to get off the island. But his personality, weird and stern, a realist with a sense of honor, thanks to his friend from Japan, he knew what he was doing. Also, he made references to his home of Chicago, and to my friends in Chicago, you don't have to clap at any mention of Wrigley Field or Chicago. Please and thank you. The Address. Kong Skull Island was the best parts of Peter Jackson's remake of King Kong, which is a very opinionated statement, and if you feel differently, sure, more power to you. But it had so much more fun to it, which is what I expect to see in a monster movie. What Kong does is, instead of just passing over the characters who clearly don't matter, the writers wanted to give them development so we actually care enough to not want them to die. Some soldiers weren't given backstory so much as they were given personality, and even then, that was worth it to hear from or see. They weren't overly developed, but we saw what they were doing, what they wanted to do, and who they were really. Some others, though, didn't feel like they should be there. Take Tom Hiddleston, for example. He didn't feel like the adventurer, survival, tracker, artist that he was supposed to be. He's a phenomenal actor, but he just wasn't someone I thought to be whatever they wanted for that character. Not to mention that they clearly want sequels. That's why they got Tom to lead into this franchise, guns blazing. But the last film, Godzilla, was set in 2014, while this film is in 1974. At this point, this is pure speculation, as I'm just wondering, mostly hoping that we see some more sequels based on this time period. Honestly, it's a blast to see something like this based in the past, especially if it continues into present day. Something I enjoy to say is that this movie is better than Godzilla 2014, by far. The best fun of the entire movie comes whenever Kong is on screen, which is how it should be. In Godzilla, they skipped over some of the fight scenes and barely focused on Godzilla at all. Here, Kong was a focal point and showed up in the first 5 minutes and had a full debut 20 minutes in. While in Godzilla, they waited a full hour to show him. And even then, they didn't even have anything to show of him like they do with Kong. But with that known, it suffers from the same problem of Godzilla, which is the villain can't match the epic feel of both monsters. Instead of trying to develop 20 other characters, what I think should happen is that the writers should focus on the real main characters, Kong and whoever the big monster against him will be. Whether it be backstory, or give it a scary design. I mean, Jesus, this looks so underdeveloped. Develop those two, not the characters that we're not even sure of. Who is the main character in the movie, anyway? John, Tom, Bree, Sam, Riley? Honestly, you tell me any of them and I'll believe you. Kong delivered a fun adventure with horrifying detail and visuals. Some parts were more impactful than others for certain, but when the movie tried, it brought down both its fists with the force of 1,000 Kongs. After the good, the bad, and the address, Kong Skull Island gets one stripe. Clear your schedules, gentlemen. We stumbled into the night, went to Grand. Show me dreams. 11:11. I'll make a wish. He didn't feel like the adventurer survival. Fuck off.